In this video, we'll be taking a look at the brief history of modern computing. Modern computing began at Cambridge University in the 1800s through a man named Charles Babbage, who was the professor there from 1828 to 1839. He came up with the idea for what was called a difference engine. The difference engine essentially would calculate mathematical tables using only mechanical parts, such as gears, wheels, rods, and pulleys. Babbage never actually completed his machine. However, after his passing, one was built and is on display in a museum. The next step towards modern computers came from Alan Turing in the 1930s. After his college years at Cambridge University, Turing designed a blueprint for what would eventually be recognized as the world's very first stored program computer. Turing described a computer that would read from storage and also write to that same storage, following instructions given by programs stored in that same storage. Around a similar time as Alan Turing's idea for the first stored program computer came a machine called Bletchley's code-cracking Colossus. The purpose of the Colossus was to crack codes used between Hitler and his generals during World War II. The Colossus gave way to the Electronic Numerical Integrator and Computer, also known as ENIAC for short. The ENIAC filled up an area space the size of 2 semi-trucks. Its purpose was to calculate artillery firing tables to improve the accuracy of artillery used by the US military. Soon after ENIAC came the Manchester Small-Scale Experimental Machine. Following the ideas of Alan Turing, this was the world's first stored program computer. At the time, this was a huge advancement in the computing world. What it had essentially done was create the first piece of software and use the first prototype of what would now be called today's RAM, called cathode ray tube memory. Not long after its creation, it was torn apart and reassembled into the Manchester Mark I, which was 3 times the size and had around 3 times the storage capacity. Soon after, in 1950, the Standards Western automatic computer was developed and built at UCLA by lead designer Dr. H. Husky. The SWAC, for short, was what was called at the time a 3-address computer, which meant that it used 3 different banks of information to complete its task. These 3 banks were typically referred to as alpha, beta, and gamma. What the SWAC would do was use 2 pieces of information, one from alpha and one from beta, which would be its 2 commands, and it would store its answer in gamma. Fast forward some years to 1971, when Intel released the Intel 4004 microprocessor. This was the world's first microprocessor, and it was as powerful as things like the SWAC and the ENIAC, and took up only the space of a fingernail as opposed to entire rooms. This was the last major step on the road to modern computers. Soon afterwards, Apple and Microsoft were both founded, along with the Windows and Mac OS operating systems respectively, bringing us where we are today with computers.